Welcome viewers, this is Janiser Ahmed from Millennium TV USA. Today in my show News and Views, we would be summing up the year 2016 and how it made its impact on the US and especially its politics. Uh, uh, Number one, we would be talking about President Obama's visit to Cuba. That was the most important, one of the most important landmarks or the milestones achieved by President Obama, especially when it comes to his foreign policy, because it was considered to be a triumph of his foreign policy. It was considered to be a triumph in statesmanship. It was in viewers. It was in 88 years that a U.S. president was able to visit Cuba. And of course, Cuba and United States, they had a troubled history going back especially to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Cuba was ruled by, there was a revolution in Cuba, and for some reason, the communists in Cuba, they were not willing to extend a hand of friendship towards the U.S. And naturally, the relationship was strained ever since, because the U.S., as you know, its policy, its philosophy, its political philosophy was not in sync. It did not match for some reason with the Cuban policy. So there was a successive display of hostility from the Cuban leadership, and it was ruled by Fidel Castro for a very long time, and he was not willing to engage in any kind of friendly diplomacy towards the U.S. There were attempts in the past by the U.S. Leadership to engage the Cubans in a friendly manner, but there was no kind of positive response from the Cuba. But again, it goes to President Obama's stature, the fact that he acted like a statesman, that he was able to win over the Cuban leadership, and he was able to go over there and visit the country in 88 years and bring about a kind of a revolutionary change in the relationship of the two nations. And it was viewed as the high watermark of President Obama's foreign policy and his of course, his demeanor as a statesman. So, viewers, now we would come on to the second main event of 2016, and that was the rise and fall of Bernie Sanders, the Democratic senator from Vermont. Viewers, as you know, the U.S. Political system, it has room for freedom. It gives you the opportunity to air your views, to express yourself, and it was because of that freedom given to so many people, all its citizens, that we saw the rise of Bernie Sanders. There was, I would say, tremendous support from all over the country, and people were seeing Bernie Sanders as some kind of a kind of a revolutionary, because he based his ideas on he was socialist, kind of socialist, and he was trying to give a very revolutionary package to the American public, and especially he talked to the youngsters, to the youth, American youth, and for instance, his program on doing away with the college debt and giving the students some kind of relief, that was very much applauded by the people. And then there was he was constantly saying that he would try to deal with the big corporations and capitalist business persons, and he would try to, of course, deal with them in a very kind of harsh manner, because according to him, they had been given the leeway and they had taken a sort of negative advantage of all the freedom. So viewers, Bernie Sanders was thought of as someone and as an agent of change who would completely change, perhaps not completely, but to partially complete the change the U.S. political system. And you could see people with stickers of Bernie on their foreheads, on their cars, and eventually, viewers, we saw that he made a very strong impact during the primaries, and he stood up as a challenge to Hillary Clinton. But eventually, we saw his fall. There was his rise and there was his fall. Bernie Sanders eventually could not rise, could not win, and who is to blame or who is responsible for that? Definitely the American the voters. They have a right, and it was perhaps in their view, Bernie Sanders was not fit to lead them, or perhaps he would not be able to convert his ideas into reality, and that's why he was unable to win the nomination, and that's how his campaign viewers came to an end. And viewers, now number 3, one of the most significant events. This is not an event, but this was a phenomena seen constantly throughout 2016. It was the police versus the versus the certain the black community, members of the black community. There were incidents in which the police was blamed for use of excessive force, and there were quite a number of incidents in which it was alleged that the police had used more force than was necessary in dealing with certain kind of situations, and that they should have acted in some other way, and they should have acted with restraint in dealing with those particular kinds of situations, and that led to certain tragedies. We saw there was an incident in which a guy, he was sitting on the front seat, and he was with his girlfriend, and the whole incident was recorded on camera by the victim's girlfriend. And when that the whole footage of the shooting came to the public's notice, it came as a shock. And similarly, there were other events, and eventually the whole issue came to the fact that the police needs to restrain itself when it is dealing with certain emergency kind of situations, dealing with the African Americans. At one point of time, there was an incident in Baltimore in which a person was badly injured, and there was certain many other incidents. But overall, the police response was that it had very brave and very hardworking, committed, disciplined, and professional people, personnel working in the force. And definitely, this was not the reality that was being projected. However, and then there was this Justice Department report that came out, and it also in its report, in its finding, it said that a segment of the police, it had been dealing with the African Americans in not quite the right way that it should have been, it should have acted. So in 2016 we saw that there was this tension between the police and members of the African American community, and definitely it made the headlines, and it was all over the news, and it was a kind of a disturbance for many people. Viewers, at number 4, it was a very sad incident that has tainted 2016. It has 2016 because of this tragic incident, not a tragic, a very, very sad and shameful incident. 2016 would be remembered as a very sad year. This was the Orlando shooting. This was a terror attack. Uh, it was there was a young man, Umar Mateen. He, for some reason, President Obama called it an act of terror and hate. For some reason, he was turned out to be, he was disturbed, mentally disturbed, and he went into a gay nightclub, and he killed around 49 people. And he had a semi-automatic weapon. And that, viewers, that brought to the fore the whole issue of assimilation of the immigrants, and how they should try to assimilate themselves in the American society. But this was and also an act of terror, because moments before that he went in and started the shooting, he called 911 and said that he swore allegiance to the ISIS. So that brought to the people's attention that there was a factor of assimilation involved. The terror networks, the ISIS, they were still active. They have yet to be eliminated, and they are finding certain members in the U.S. mainland, and that was a very tragic and sad incident, and that claimed innocent and precious lives. So, viewers, that would always be remembered as an event that stained 2016. And at number 5, viewers, we saw this phenomena of the rise of the clown. This was happening all across the U.S., and it was so strange that nobody could actually analyze it. Nobody could actually go into the details of why this thing was happening. Why all over in certain parts of the U.S., clowns were seen. They would suddenly emerge right onto the street. Some clown would come out from the bush in the Central Park, or the trees in Prospect Park, and they would have a knife, or they would have some weapon on them, and they would try to scare the people. Eventually, at the start, it was thought of as something that would die down, and these were just isolated incidents, and there was nothing serious about it. But eventually, there was a very sad incident. One clown, he was in a clown's costume, and he came and attacked a father. He had a knife, and when that person tried to, he was a father, and he suffered serious injuries to his hand, and eventually he was taken to the hospital and he died. The police, they were trying to calm the people. They were telling the public to calm down, that there was nothing serious about this. But this was if you could have asked a social scientist, they would have perhaps explained it as that this was the result of frustration within the youth. The youth, they were trying to express themselves, and that was how they were expressing themselves in a very that was I would say not a positive way of expressing yourself. When you are going out suddenly and you are trying to scare the kids, you are trying to scare the families who are out there at the parks and having picnics and parties, you are trying to scare them. That's not a gentlemanly way. And even McDonald's, they took off their mascot because they were afraid that people would thought that this mascot was some kind of a sinister omen, and they would stop coming to the restaurant. So that was the extent of the scare. And so far as the professional clowns were concerned, who were really you could see them in the Times Squares and in other parks, who were making money by that was their livelihood. They were scared, and they stopped going out and making money because they thought that they would be seen as those scary clowns, and that they would be targeted, and people would hate them. So this phenomena of the clown, that raises a question for the social scientists and for the general public. Why did it emerge, and what was the reason behind it? Why were people, young people, trying to scare other people? Of course, there was one life was lost, but the question remains: was this the result of frustration in the U.S. Or anywhere else? Because this was happening in UK as well. So, people, the viewers, they need to look into it. They need to examine this phenomena. And viewers, with this, we'll take a short break. Don't go away. We'll be back after a short break. Welcome back, viewers. As we were trying to sum up 2016 and the main events, major events that made the headlines and that made a lasting impact on the public. At number 6, we have the fall of eastern Aleppo. Aleppo, as you know, it was once the largest city of Syria, and it was home to very insidious war going on, and there were so many actors involved in that warfare. But in 2016, we saw that the eastern city of eastern Aleppo, it fell to the hands of the government held the government forces, and the rebels, they lost. There were gut-wrenching images of the victims of the war, and naturally it led to an international outcry as to what was going on in the country, and somebody needed to intervene and stop the war. Close to 500,000 people have been killed, and over 11 million people, they were forced out of their homes, and that eventually started the refugee crisis, and refugees started pouring in across Europe into Germany, and then it started different concerns as to how different nations would take care of the refugees, and this was a crisis so big in its intensity and magnitude that it virtually seemed like it would send its shockwaves around the globe, because at one hand it was the Russia, Iran, and the Assad regime, they were involved, and they were not willing to back down. The Bashar al-Assad, he was not willing to step down amidst tremendous pressure from the opposition, and the pressure to allow democracy to prevail in Syria. And who knows, if democracy might have given the chance, might have been given the chance, the war in Syria could have been prevented. And but 2016, it went very bad for Syria, and as we continue to watch, the tragedy continues to move into the next year, and all we can do is to hope and pray for the victims, and hope that the situation, this terrible situation, will come to an end. And viewers, at number 7, we have in the U.S. The LGBT community, asserting its rights, and it was in the year 2016 that the Pentagon announced that it was going to eliminate the ban on LGBT community on openly serving in the military, and that was considered as a major victory for the LGBT community, for the transgenders, for the lesbians, and for the gays, and because they were victims of discrimination, and they had been fighting for equal rights in society, but somehow they were unable to get those rights, and it goes to the credit of the Democratic government, President Obama and Hillary Clinton. She also was a very strong supporter of giving LGBT community its rights. So that was considered to be a year for the LGBT community, and they were happy, and they were able to assert their rights. Viewers, at number 8, we have the victory of Donald J. Trump, who is now our president-elect, and he would soon be taking office. This not only was, I would say, a positive surprise for the U.S. Because he had the confidence of the U.S. voters, but this was considered to be, it sent, the news was, it shook the whole world, and there was reason behind that. When Donald Trump was running in January, and he started to make the headlines, many people dismissed him as as a sort of hot potato who would later on lose, and who would not even figure or go up the success ladder in the election campaign. But he had certain virtues and he had certain qualities that he was able to bank upon. Donald Trump, he stood up and he rose like a shining star. Number one, his main redeeming feature was that he was not willing to take the donors' money as other candidates used to take, and the American public, they appreciated this fact to a very large extent, because they thought that if their candidate is not taking money from any company, any corporation, or any entity, that means that their candidate would be able to serve them openly and freely, and with the freedom that they deserve. He won't be able to, there would be no strings attached. So Donald Trump made sure, and he was able to convince the public that by not taking anybody's money, he would serve them with dedication and commitment. And likewise, he was also appreciated by the US public, because he kind of symbolized the success of the American entrepreneur. The very fact that if you are hardworking, if you are intelligent, if you are assertive, and if you can start a company, and if you can manage people, you can have as much money as Donald Trump has right now. So American public, the voters, they were happy with the success of Donald Trump in his personal life, and they thought that by making a success out of his personal life, he might be able to bring success to the US economy and change their lives. So and secondly, most importantly, he owes his rise to the fact that he was able to deal with the media in a very positive kind of manner. He was like unfazed by certain scandals that emerged, and he sailed and he navigated all those scandals as if nothing happened, and because he had nothing to, he said he had nothing to hide, and he emerged successful. So, and viewers, this would always be regarded as the success of the American dream. So with that, we move on to our ninth one of the most important events, and that was the Russian hacking that was instigated at the behalf of the Kremlin, the Russian government itself, with President Putin at its masthead, managing the whole campaign. The US hackers, it brought to the fore the fact that the warfare has changed. Now it is no more a war of tanks, missiles, and the conventional weapons, but now it is more a warfare that is going to go into your electric grids or your computer systems, or it is going to do damage to you in some other way. And with all the sophisticated technology that the Kremlin has, it was able to do tremendous harm and damage to Clinton's campaign. And for instance, there was this one event in which the hackers they hacked into the DNC's emails, and it turned out that the Hillary Clinton, she had been given a question that was going to be asked during the election campaign. So when this news came out, there was a tremendous pressure, and it led to it damaged the campaign. And so Then the Russian hackers, they hacked into her chairman, Mr. Podesta's emails, and then they were able to spread the news, the negative news, and she received a lot of bad press because of that. And Julian Assange, he made his animosity towards Hillary Clinton public, and he said that in this campaign he was going to sort of launch a cyber warfare against Hillary Clinton's campaign, and he would not like to see her going to the White House. So all of this was instigated by Kremlin. It was done at President Putin's behalf. Now this has been officially confirmed by President Obama, by Obama administration, and this, on the one hand, it shows that warfare is now changed. It is perhaps it is cyber warfare, and this is very serious because it is now technology that is ruling all the weapons system. And President Obama had to retaliate. He had to impose sanctions on Russia, and certain Russian diplomats, they have been expelled. And how President Putin has responded, that again has led to speculation as to how he tends to form relations with the new administration that would be taking office after January 20th. So this was quite an event for the U.S. Public because it showed that despite the fact that you are one of the most strongest nation on earth, you can be vulnerable, and you have to take the precautionary measures. And viewers, with this we come on to our last one of the very significant event, or rather a phenomena that was witnessed in 2016, and that was the rise of fake news, fake and false news. Fake news, viewers, this, as you know, that this is an age of free information. There's a free flow of information going on right now. You can have your own blog, and you can have as many blogs you want, and people are doing that. Nobody is going to come and stop you from launching or starting your own blog. And there are companies, and there's Google, and there's Facebook, and there's Twitter, and there's this company, and there's that social media site, etc., etc. So with this rise of this free flow of information, concerns are now rising that which news are you going to believe, and which news are you going to be skeptic about? Can you believe this news coming from that news channel or not? In 2016, we saw that there was this fake news item, and it sort of motivated a young man, and he came up with a weapon, and he went to a pizza restaurant in Washington, and according to police, he went there to investigate the allegations that pizza restaurant was being used to make child pornogaphy. So, and he fired 2 shots. Fortunately, nobody was harmed, and the police later arrested him. And then that disgruntled young man revealed to the police that he had acted out of that news item that he had seen somewhere on the internet. That was turned out to be, it was a fake news item. So, can fake news do so much damage? Yes, it can. That's what we have seen, and it needs to be, perhaps it needs to be regulated, because some experts are now saying that it is really it's virtually impossible to stop the flow of at least the fake news, because there are so many like channels from which fake news can emerge, and you cannot stop them. Similarly, in another incident of fake news, Pakistani defense minister was seen as issuing a threat to Israeli government that he would launch a nuclear attack. He would retaliate with nuclear weapons against Israel. But turns out that was fake news. and the defense minister had never said those words. But imagine if that news item could have, could have been interpreted, and what it could have done. It could have, soured the relations between the two countries. Then there's also, as we saw, there's this phenomena of false news, and it also was observed in 2016. False news, viewers, refers to the fact that as a journalist, as a credible source of news, you do not do the kind of homework that you should have done before publishing a news item. So many news reporters, they were seen as publishing false news. There was this event in one incident. It was alleged that President Putin and the Russian government, they have banned and rather closed an Anglo-American school in Russia. But turns out it was not the case. That was false news. Somebody told somebody, and then the news was published without double checking. So the reporters, they perhaps need to double check on what's going on, how secure and credible their sources are. And because if that is not done, the very credibility of media, that is at stake. So and we also observe that President-elect Donald Trump, he is unhappy with the coverage by certain media houses, and he has been constantly saying that the reporters, they need to do their homework, because they cannot turn their opinions into a news item. That's not what journalism is. So viewers, that was the year 2016 in review. That was a very tumultuous year, and with that we hope all the tragedies and sad incidents, they would come to an end, and they would not go into 2017. 2017 would be a year of progress and prosperity and happiness for all the people, especially for the American public, and it would herald a new positive change with the Trump administration coming to power. Thank you very much, viewers, for watching News and Views. This is Janiser Ahmed from Millennium TV. Until the next show, goodbye.